What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. Today we've got Whisper Status 74, aka Brian, who's also a YouTuber and one of the owners of the newest Sony 2020 television sets, the Sony 950H. Brian, tell them who you are and tell them what you got.
Hey, what's up, guys? I am Brian from Whisper Status 74, and I have the newest Sony X950H at 49 inches. It is Sony's 4K flagship, which we will talk a lot about today as what a flagship really means in 2020 in the 4K lineup. So it's nice. We've done some preliminary reviews on it, but we have a lot to talk about as far as what 4K means now that 8K is being ushered in by all manufacturers.
What's so this is Sony's new flagship, right? The 950, the top of the line LED, right before you get to the OLED.
Right. They kind of overlap. They have the 8K models coming out this year, which will be their real flagships, and then their OLED is still the A9G, which will umbrella until they release the A9H, which will probably be in the fall.
Yeah, they always do that.
So they did with the Z9F and the Z9D, but it's a little complicated. But you're seeing with the manufacturers now, I think having their 4K lineups being a little bit crippled in order to usher in the 8K lineup. So it's tricky for people that are just getting into 4K.
Yeah, it kind of sucks. I don't think there's anything smaller for 8K, right? No, like there's no 49-inch option.
There will be. I don't believe so. No, I don't think so.
You think is there? Have you seen the 950G from last year?
I have.
Have you? How do you think it compares to this one?
To be honest, I did a video on the channel where I compared it to the 2017 900E, and they're very close. And that doesn't always bode well that a TV that's a few years older can actually hang in there with the newest model. So I think it's very close to the 950G, if not identical in some ways. Maybe it's a little bit brighter, but it really does hang in there with the entire Sony lineup from the 900F, the 950G, and the 950H. What's interesting though is the Z9F from a few years ago is probably looks better than this display does now. They just haven't really changed much or changed enough, in my opinion.
And this guy, right, it's 49 inches, $1,000 per Value Electronics website here. Shout out to Value Electronics for providing this set, right?
Yep, they loaned it to me, Robert and Wendy.
Yeah, great people. If you guys in the chat here are from Connecticut or New York, definitely go check out Value Electronics right here on the webpage. They're authorized dealers. Very competitive as well. Just a little plug for those guys.
Yeah, amazing people.
And they have not disclosed any dimming zones. Have you tried doing that little white ball test?
I have not.
No?
I have not. I believe it's just small, 20, 22 zones. I think that's kind of been the issue with many of us that have followed full array since it came out, with the Z9D. Z9D, and that the local dimming zones have kind of didn't increase the way we wanted them to. We all really wanted blooming to disappear completely. And if it was evident on the 950G, they're still blooming on the 950H.
Yeah, I noticed that last time I went down to the store there. Unfortunately, yeah. I've been stuck in the house all month. I haven't seen any of the new models.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I think when people saw the Z9D from 2015 or 2016, the blooming was so minimal. The 940E, the blooming was nearly non-existent. Same with the KS9800 from Samsung. To have so much blooming now is insult to injury. And I think it is pushing people more towards OLED, just simply because they're not dealing with the transition of local dimming. This display does have a fair amount of blooming just because it's so small, and off angle isn't the best. But dead center, it's impressive. But the minute you move off angle, you can actually see the backlight in action, which to me is a big draw.
Isn't it supposed to have that off angle technology built in?
Not the 49-inch. No? All sizes do, but I don't always love that look either. Robert and I talked about that even with the Z9G. It sometimes creates a cross-hatched look to it.
Yeah.
Some people love it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but then again, viewing angle is so much more important with a really small display. So if you have a 75-inch or an 85-inch, to me, off angle isn't as important.
How is it
But
for HDR? Like your Netflix or 4K Blu-ray?
it's good. It definitely, the Dolby Vision is much better than it was a few years ago on Sony. It was pretty dark with the 900F. It's better. The 950G, it was better. The Z9F, it was better. And A9G and the OLEDs, it's definitely better than it was. No problems with HDR performance. The picture looks great. The biggest drawback I have with this display is it's very similar to last year's model.
Yeah.
The Dolby Vision, like I said, is better than it was when it was first implemented on Sony models. But the lack of HDMI 2.1 for me is just unforgivable at this stage, is where I'm struggling, because it doesn't really give you any reason to purchase this model versus last year's.
Are all the Samsung LG sets, are they 2.1? Do you know?
They're going to have HDMI 2.1, I believe. I know the 8K ones are, and I believe some of their 4Ks will have probably the same capabilities that the Q90 had.
Yeah.
But like you, I've been stuck home, so I haven't really had a chance to check them out either. But the Samsung lineup has not been impressive in the 4K space. They've really pushed everything to 8K.
Yeah, I've heard they gimped their 4K models this year.
Which is tough, because the Q9 or the Q80 and the Q90 and the Q8FN were always models that we recommended.
Yep.
To have them not be recommendable is really confusing for people that don't follow channels like us, because they go in and just buy the next corresponding model. And they find that it's so, like even last year's 70R was much different than the 7FN. They don't exactly correspond or line up. So Samsung has almost too many models. Sony has too few. But Sony has no HDMI 2.1 for the 950H, but will have it for the 900H, which makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. The 950 is supposed to be a step above.
It is. And the 900, this is where I did the side by side with the 950H and the 900E. I can't imagine, they're so close, I can't imagine the 900H being much better. Or if it's even close to the 950H, then it neutralizes the 950H, and it can't be worse than a TV that's years old. So I don't know where they're coming in with it. And I heard it might be 60 hertz. So I can't verify that, but that would be.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, Sony's always doing some shit like that.
They are. They just don't. I understand the HDMI 2.1, how many of us, if you have a lot of gamers on your channel, that it is a necessity.
Yep.
The problem is when you have other companies like Hisense and TCL and Vizio at half the cost, or having 5 HDMIs, they're having HDMI 2.1, they're updating them. Sony just doesn't seem to really care. But it's hard for me to recommend these displays on my channel if I have a lot of gamers in my community. HDMI 2.1 is going to be something they need.
What do you think? When's the 900 coming out? Do you think it's about the same time the PS5 is coming out?
It should be out sooner than that. Yeah. What Robert said, it should. Who knows what release dates are going to be now because of what's happening with the virus. But
what's the?
I don't know. It's not going to line up. The systems aren't going to be out till next year or until the holiday. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was coming out this year.
But you would think that if you're Sony, you would want to have your display set up. But I don't believe they think that way.
Yeah, it sucks. I figured maybe they'd have like a go-to TV they drop with the PS5 announcement, so it's like not super high-end but affordable with the 2.1 spec. PS5 is 2.1, right?
Yeah, I think that's what they're expecting with the 900H. But again, if the 900H isn't as good as the 9, it just doesn't make sense, because the 950H would be the go-to for that higher end.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. That'll turn off in a second.
Oh, we actually got a Sony representative here in the chat. It says 2.1 is not needed for console gaming.
That is true. It's not needed, but if you want to get 4K above 60, it will be necessary.
Yeah, that's what I was
Or if you want, it will be necessary as well. If you want to get into G-Sync, FreeSync, things like that, those are things that these displays aren't offering, at least yet. They could add them later. But that's what Samsung has had, is variable refresh rate. The C9 has G-Sync.
Yep.
So Sony is really not. Now I understand that it's not necessary because we're gaming on them now. I mean, in 4K 60, I believe is going to be the it's going to be the benchmark. I know a lot of people think it's going to be 8K 30 or 4K 120, but consoles are going to be 4K 60 probably for a while.
Yeah.
But have it at launch, that's a PC thing. Yeah, it's going to be a PC thing, and right now it's a PC thing. It's been a PC for years, but consoles are touting that they're going to have 4K 120. So HD 2.1 is, even if Sony doesn't have it, your competitors will have it. And that's kind of the have. So when people ask me for my recommendations, I'm giving them all aspects. When I ask their usage, gaming always comes up. If they tell me they're not a gamer,
so
then,
120 at 1080p? Does that sound like a thing? Is that a 2.1 spec? Yeah.
The displays can do it now.
Just not 4K 120.
Not 4K 120, no.
Yeah. So what's the main, like I've been saying, I don't think 2.1 is really relevant right now.
Nope.
But everybody seems to be kind of stuck on it.
Well, if they're buying displays and they want to be as future-proof, which we know is really hard to do on technology, but if you have a C9 that has G-Sync compatibility, you have your Samsungs have variable refresh rate, your TCLs, all these cheaper brands, Sony will stand alone without it, at least in the few of their models, and I don't know if you want to have that.
Yeah. Well, it seems like they're pushing 8K and 2.1 this year, so this does seem a little odd that Sony would be more standoffish on it. So that might scare people away from it that maybe aren't so technically knowledgeable on like video game standards and all that stuff like that, or PC standards. You know what I mean?
Well, I think Sony is really going to be more on being as accurate as possible in terms of Sony pictures. Their Blu-rays are, as you know, their 4K Blu-rays are excellent. They're always going to look for accuracy. So I don't think they're as, it's not that I don't think they're knowledgeable. I don't think they really care to be based on PC specs, but having the Sony gaming part of it, you think they'd be more connected and saying, hey, we're releasing these new consoles in the holiday. Let's get on the same page. But we've seen that with large companies before where they're not always talking. But you're having the PS5 is going to be utilizing HDMI 2.1. So I understand what the Sony rep was saying. But if your competitors are they're going to have it and you're not going to have it, that's going to be a disadvantage no matter how you put it.
Yeah, that's true. But really though, if it comes down to brass tacks, you really don't need it for movie watching though, because there's nothing really in the spec that would.
No.
Yeah, unless you're talking about eARC, but then there's already eARC features already out there on sets right now.
Yeah, it's purely for gaming. I mean, I know a lot of us really wanted, for me, rather than seeing any of this, I really wanted 12-bit panels. I really wanted higher peak brightness, and I wanted more zones. I wanted that before we got into 8K. But that's not really going to sell TVs. People aren't going to go in and buy a 4K 12-bit panel. They're going to buy 8K just because of the simple math. 4K, 8K. They're buying that.
Yeah. It's us because everything's going to be 8K, so they're going to be looking at these 8K demos playing at your Best Buy or PC Richards, and then they're going to get at home, and it's going to look nowhere near that because there's nothing in 8K to watch.
Well, you saw at the Z9, which is the LG one in Robert's store, with LG's 8K content made for them, it's unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. And Jennifer Gala, who has a channel on YouTube and also makes IMAX films, she has a 900R. She loves it, but she produces and makes 8K movies.
Yeah.
So other than her, I don't know many people that actually have any kind of 8K content unless they're photographers or filmmakers. For me, 8K is all about what's the quality of the upscale. Are we going to have a decent upscale? And that's always, upscaling is always really dicey because we know upscale just fits the screen. Doesn't mean things look better.
Well, Sony's always been good, like the best at their upscaling, as far as I know. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, so there's always that. So I mean, like I've been saying, like I don't think 2.1 is really, it's definitely not needed. We're not going to get 8K movies on disc anytime soon or streaming. We barely have 4K movies. We barely have 4K movies on Blu-ray. It's just becoming a thing now. After how many years now? Like 3, 4, 5 years now? No, like 4 years, 3 years.
For what? HDMI 2.1.
No, just like movies on 4K Blu-ray in general. Just content to consume.
Absolutely.
We still don't even have like 1080p cable. Like it's still like 1080i 720.
Well, exactly. Well, the thing is, too, is HDMI 2.1 really is, even we did reviews on it last year, it really is a novelty. It's not something that we really need. Even being a 4K, even being a gamer with a PC, 4K 60 is amazing. And I think people that have consoles that are looking forward to 4K 120 will be really happy with 4K 60 when they get their console. So if they have a 4K panel that can do 4K 60, they're going to be very happy with the experience. They don't need HDMI 2.1.
Yeah.
And HDMI 2.1 is not even needed. The problem is the rest of the industry is pushing that way. So to not have it is a disadvantage, even if we don't think it's necessary.
Yep. Looks like your Jennifer Gala is in the chat. Is that what you said? Her name was?
Hi, Jennifer. How are you? Yep, that's her. Yep. She has a AK 900R. But she's a filmmaker, so she actually makes 8K film. She utilizes that.
Yeah.
So she's somebody who is also a filmmaker, photographer. She's using those pixels that many of us aren't going to see. So, you and I have both seen 8K demos, but a lot of the movies you review are basically 2K upscales, and we know that can be messy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no way we're getting 8K content anytime soon.
But the Sony rep that is in the chat does have a good point. I mean, they are saying it's not necessary, and that's not really the argument. The argument is, even if it's not necessary, your competitors are going to have it.
Yep.
So I have people asking me between a Samsung Q90 and a Sony, and one has variable refresh rate and has some of those capabilities, I'm going to steer them there. And unfortunately for Sony, how do I recommend they upgrade to the 950H?
Yeah.
So how would I recommend? So when people ask me, should I go from a 950G to a 950H? The answer is no.
You say go for it, don't go for it. Yay or nay?
I would say the 950H is a great choice. Again, if you're entering the 4K lineup, you like Sony's look, you want good Dolby Vision implementation. It's bright, but the 950G is right there. It's very similar.
Yep.
Well, I can recommend it if you're new to the market. I can't recommend you upgrade to it unless you, again, are going up in size if you want something. But I would say measure the value between last year's models, the 950G, and play it that way. But, it's a nice display. It just isn't a big jump. I don't not recommend it. It just isn't something that is going to blow you away in comparison to what came before it.
Yeah.
So if it's an upgrade at all, it's very incremental, which isn't a bad thing. It's not a step back at all, but it's just it's very good for what Sony does, but you're not going to have the HDMI 2.1, which a lot of people are upset about. And I don't believe they're going to upgrade it to HDMI 2.1 myself. So if you're not a gamer, it's a great choice. If you like Sony's natural look, their accuracy, it has that Netflix picture mode, the filmmaker mode. It's a great looking display. It's just not a big leap over what's come before it.
All right. Well, thanks for the input on that. So what do you guys think in the chat? Are you guys interested in the Sony 950H? Or are you going to hold off for the OLEDs? Or are you thinking about doing the LG OLED, the same size, the 49-inch, which I think is going to be a popular size this year? So let us know what's on your buying options. What are you going to decide in doing this year for 2020? Or are you just going to hold off? And is 2.1 really something important to you? Leave a comment down below.